Hello, my dear friends. Today is April 25th. You are on the channel Sanya in Florida. As always, here is a news summary from the Ukrainian front. Today we'll go along the line of contact. There, Ukrainian bloggers launched an attack, stormed empty buildings in the gray zone, and as a result they got hit. Well, more precisely, a Fey beast struck their command post. We'll talk about this, and I'll show everything with geomaterials. Today there were mutual strikes between Russia and Ukraine. We'll sort that out as well. Accordingly, for the first time, something reached the Urals, and there was a massive strike on Ukraine. And at the end of the video, we'll talk in detail about what's happening on the line of contact, using the example of one specific assault trooper. I'll explain what's going on there, what the real situation is. Everything is true, only the truth. Alright, let's get started. Today, there was another massive shelling of Ukraine. The last record for shelling Ukraine was on March 23rd to 24th. There were almost 1,000 targets, 948 drones and 34 missiles. Today there are 666 targets. I don't know why that number, but that's according to Ukrainian sources who, of course, as always, lie about everything. 666 targets, 29 Kh-101 cruise missiles, 5 Kalibr cruise missiles, 1 Iskander-K cruise missile, 12 Iskander ballistic missiles, and S-400. A total of 619 drones were recorded. The Ukrainian side reports hits from 13 missiles and 36 UAVs in 23 locations. It is also reported that drone debris fell in 9 locations. In other words, debris fell as always. Dnipro was the main target. By the way, here is the infographic in front of you showing where most of the strikes landed. But in Dnipro, there were indeed serious strikes. Right now on your screen, you can see an oil depot burning in Dnipro. 4 people were killed, 34 injured, a 4-story residential building was partially destroyed, and an entrance collapsed. Today, the Ukrainian armed forces struck the Urals. Somehow, Ukrainian drones flew 2,000 kilometers over Russian territory and reached my hometown of Chelyabinsk and also Yekaterinburg. That is, you could hear air defense systems working in the sky, there were explosions, there were drones, and accordingly, in Yekaterinburg, a UAV crashed into a building. Here on your screen are some shots of the aftermath of the Ukrainian drone strike. Naturally, I have some questions. How did Ukrainian UAVs manage to fly 2,000 kilometers and reach all the way to Chelyabinsk and Yekaterinburg? The trend here is clear. The geography of Ukrainian strikes is expanding. In other words, Ukrainian drones are reaching farther and farther. Let's move on. Now let's move over to the map of the Ukrainian front and talk about the changes along the line of contact. This is what the map looks like as of today. Let's begin. Artyomovsk, Malinovka, the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. We'll talk only about the advances of Russian forces. Here, Russian troops advanced 3.5 kilometers forward and crossed this Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. It's no longer a canal, it has already dried up. Previously, water was supplied to Donbass through this canal, but the Ukrainians blocked it. As a result, there hasn't been any water for a long time. Now Russian troops have crossed this canal. Accordingly, this is quite an important defensive line for the Ukrainian forces, and activity has been observed here at this point. On your screen, a Russian armed forces serviceman comes under fire from the Ukrainian armed forces on the western bank of the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal near Malinovka. Let's continue along the line of contact. Now, Konstantinovka, the so-called assault by Ukrainian bloggers. That's what I call it. I'll show you 2 pieces of geospatial material. Well, in my opinion, these are excellent geospatial materials. Here's the first piece of material. Here, in fact, is an attack by a so-called Ukrainian Armed Forces infantry unit in the industrial zone of the Tsinkovy microdistrict, assaulting Russian armed forces positions. In the video, the Ukrainian armed forces create a 3D model of several houses in the gray zone, then play around with this model in VR, and after that, assault troops set out to storm empty houses in territory controlled by Ukraine. So basically, Ukrainian bloggers really just needed to go and shoot some nice footage, some kind of story about how they're going on the attack, how brave they are, and here they are taking over some ruined houses. They even made a 3D model of these houses using drones. In short, they needed to create a beautiful picture. But in reality, where were they actually operating right here? This is territory controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces. In fact, there's quite a significant gray zone here between the Russian and Ukrainian troops. There's actually no one there at all. All these houses were empty beforehand. So all of this was done just for blogging purposes. In response, Russian forces used FABs against the bloggers in this section of the front. There was a temporary deployment point here. Here on your screen is a Russian airstrike on the temporary deployment point of the 156th Brigade with a Fabi 1500 in the city of Kostiantynivka. A huge explosion, of course. Well, it seems things aren't going too well for the bloggers. And here is shown a FAB strike on the 3rd Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces using a FAB 3000 in the settlement of Tatyanovka. Massive explosions and, of course, losses among Ukrainian troops. In general, as I understand it, things aren't going too well for the Ukrainian bloggers here. And we move on. Now, Krasnoarmeysk and Rodinskoye. There are positions of Ukrainian forces there and a slight adjustment to the map in this section of the front. The Ukrainian positions are located right here. Hostilities are taking place 2 kilometers from the line dividing the zones controlled by each side. Accordingly, the map adjustment is shown on your screen. A strike by the Russian armed forces on Ukrainian positions in the residential area of Rodinskoye. The map update is marked for you in a different color. Next, Gulyaipol and Novosilovka. We continue along the line of contact, and again we are only talking about the advance of Russian troops. Gulyaipol and Novosilovka are located right here. Russian troops are advancing here by 6 kilometers according to new geospatial data. Accordingly, based on this geospatial data, Gulyaipolskoye comes under the control of Russian forces. And here, Russian positions have been spotted, right in this forest belt. On your screen is an infantry assault by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Servicemen of the armed forces of the Russian Federation came under fire from the Ukrainian armed forces on the eastern outskirts of Novosilovka. The distance from the active combat zone here is more than 6 kilometers. So, according to this geospatial data, there is a rather significant advance of Russian forces here. We will be closely monitoring this section of the front. Now let's talk about what's happening on the line of contact. It's time to discuss this in general, using the example of one assault soldier. You know that as of today, the saturation with drones on both sides has reached enormous levels. That is, for every assault soldier, both on the Ukrainian and Russian sides, there are a lot of drones, really a lot. Let's break it down using this example in front of you. Look, the first drone arrives. Now watch, we immediately turn on the footage and the drone arrives literally at his feet. This is the explosion of a fragmentation grenade. It doesn't matter whose assault soldier this is. Basically, right now, the situation is the same for both the Ukrainian and Russian sides. That is, the explosion happens right at his feet. The guy was really lucky. He was born under a lucky star. No injuries at all. Everything's fine. So he can move around. Everything is great. It's just, well, luck on a whole other level, extremely good luck when you're not injured even though a drone explodes right at your feet. Next. But that's not all. There's another drone there that's chasing the assault soldier again around this high voltage tower. It keeps flying, trying to catch him, and then it explodes again. The explosion, if you look at the video, you can see that the blast is absolutely right next to him. So once again, right at his feet, a second explosion, this time with shrapnel. You see, this is already in the realm of survival fantasy, because, well, you have a grenade exploding right at near your feet, not a single injury, and you keep moving. Then another one explodes literally right here, maybe 2 meters away from him, you see? Again, a fragmentation grenade. What is an FPV drone? A fragmentation grenade. Again, the assault trooper manages to survive, you see. He's fine. It's like he was really born under a lucky star. This is the luckiest person in the world. But it doesn't end there. Let's go further. The saturation of drones, let me repeat, this saturation of drones for every assault trooper. Look, the person keeps moving, yes, this assault trooper, and accordingly they try to catch him further. And another drone comes in, you see? So there was a first one, a second one, a third one. And basically, well, what's going to happen on your screen now? So he's going through barbed wire, moving forward, apparently carrying out some combat mission. But now, in my opinion, the combat mission no longer matters because there are so many drones in the sky that it simply becomes impossible for him to complete the mission. Look, a third drone arrives, circling here. There are no obstacles left for it. He's caught in the middle of the field, and the third drone comes in. Let's see what comes of this. Yes, he is killed. That is, he dies. A direct hit. That's it. That's the situation. Why did I show you this? The footage is terrible, but it shows what is happening on the front line of combat. The density of drones on both sides is such that, accordingly, for every assault soldier, there are several, even dozens of FPV drones hunting him, including reconnaissance drones that are constantly circling in the sky. Also, recently, Ukrainian forces tried to carry out some kind of attack. I showed you that attack. There was an Abrams and 2 boxes. All of it was burned, and every Ukrainian soldier was hit by several drones until they were all finished off there. So basically, that's how any offensive action takes place for us. That is, even if the assault troops manage to move forward, yes, then again, a bunch of drones arrives, making any further offensive actions simply impossible for them. It's simply impossible even to move. So the only chance a person has to survive in this vast area, about 5 kilometers more or less, where there are a lot of drones flying around, is to dig into the ground as quickly as possible. Do you understand? Successful and rapid offensive actions in such a situation are impossible, and any advance forward by anyone, it doesn't even matter whose assault trooper it was, Ukrainian sources will say Russian, Russians will say Ukrainian, but any advance simply becomes impossible with such a density of drones. I've said for a long time now that in order to solve this problem, you need to have anti-drone weapons. They're even more important for you than firearms. Do you understand? As of today, this is an incredibly reliable and specialized weapon that is specifically designed to shoot down drones. Perhaps it utilizes some kind of advanced multi-shot net system, or maybe it is something else entirely. But we can all agree that a standard shotgun is simply not enough for this task, right? That is some kind of technological solution that still doesn't exist on the line of contact. And so this is how assault troops are fighting. What we see on the front line is huge losses on both sides over some village with just one street, where all the houses are destroyed and there isn't a single resident left. That's about it. One group of assault troops enters from one side. That's what happens to them, and on the other side, the same thing happens to the others. And this, is just like it was in the Soviet Union, right? Where they ground up people like meat, you understand? I won't name it, so as not to offend anyone, what all of this is called. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention. You are watching Sanya in Florida's channel. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Telegram channel, to Max, and to RooTube. Video updates are posted there every day. Thank you. Goodbye.